So, I want to welcome everyone to another episode of Chronic Convos, where we talk to people who are suffering from chronic disease and then finding a way to live with that disease and raise awareness for others. Today, we have with us Isabella Garcia-Fischer. She's been a personal trainer for 5 years, and she's now a mental health, nutrition, and a personal trainer, of course, for people to really make sure they can stay fit, especially focus on people who have chronic illnesses. Isabel has been doing this for a long time. She's a biology major, and now she's also in grad school studying physical fitness as well. So we'll welcome her to the show and welcome you because you know a lot about these things, and we really want to hear about your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, and so I guess we'll just start pretty quickly. I want to know first, yeah, a little bit about your story. First, how you kind of discovered that you had these illnesses in the first place.
Oh God, where do I start? So I've had symptoms since I was really young. But my first diagnosis or the first thing that yelled something's wrong was a back condition. And um, it started off with like really severe back pain. And I was like 5 years old when I had a PET scan. I started having MRIs when I was like 5 years old too. And so that was like the beginning of my chronic illness journey. Although I would say that the back issues are the least of my problems, especially as I got older. But I would say that growing up, also, I would have some party tricks, which was like being able to do a split or being able to like lean on a counter and my hip would pop out and I'd be like, look how cool this is. And it's like, no, that's not
It's funny how
normal.
kids can do things like, oh, yay, it's fun. Look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah.
And it's like that's actually not normal. And it wasn't until seventh grade when everything started to happen and everything changed. And so I started like fainting. I started with really bad joint pain. I started like my both of my shoulders were subluxing as well as both of my hips, which subluxations are like partial dislocations. And I had really bad GI symptoms. I would have tachycardia episodes, and I was like, what is going on? And this was like every single day I had symptoms. Like it was a lot. And eventually it got to the point where I couldn't really walk upstairs, right? So I was like walking up 3 steps and I'd be like, okay, I'm in so much pain, I need a break. And this is coming from someone who growing up, I was a dancer and then I was a competitive horseback rider. So it's not like I didn't have muscle on me and it's not like I wasn't fit. Like clearly something was wrong. Um, and it got to the point where I could no longer horseback ride. And I really had to take a step back and I started um my chronic illness journey because I will say like I grew up in a family and in the horseback riding world where the mentality is like keep pushing, keep going, like you're in pain but it's okay, like you're strong, you got this. And so I very much had that mentality even when I was in a lot of pain. But like the moment that I remember really well, and the moment that my mom started to believe me too, was when I had a sling backpack on my back, which like that's super light. Like there's no weight to that. And then I had my phone in it, and your phones nowadays are like super light too. Um, and I had severe shoulder pain, and I wasn't able to again like walk up the stairs. And my mom was like, "Okay, like clearly something is wrong. Like, we do actually have to go to the doctor."
And how old were you at that point?
So that was eighth grade.
Okay. Oh, so this
Yeah.
happened quickly.
Yeah. So things spiraled pretty quickly. So symptoms started out of nowhere in seventh grade. And then eighth grade was when I officially launched my chronic illness journey, is what I say, in terms of like going to see so many doctors and like cardiologists, rheumatologists, orthopedic doctors, like all over the place. And I traveled, oh, well, I should say gastroenterologist because that was a massive and still is a massive part of my journey. Um, and yeah, I think something I want to highlight because I want kids to hear this, or people who are teenagers or young adults, is that growing up when you have chronic illnesses is really hard because, you know, kids or teenagers are young. They don't really understand that other people can be struggling with things, and kids can be mean when they see symptoms, right? And they don't realize that it's symptoms. Um, and so it was really hard growing up with all these symptoms. And, I went to my middle school and high school, and people weren't the nicest, and you kind of have to push through it. And so this is just a little reminder to everyone listening that we should be nice to everyone around us.
Oh yeah. 'Cause I mean, because a lot of people are confused when they hear that someone who has an illness or a disability like this would be bullied. Because usually if someone has a visible illness, right, like they're in a wheelchair, of course, no one would even think of bullying someone being in a wheelchair unless like the worst human on earth. So I guess I want you to kind of expand on that. So what exactly does it look like to be bullied for an invisible illness? Did the people kind of know you had it, or was it just people making assumptions based on a lack of knowledge?
Yeah, so definitely assumptions. Only my really close friends knew that I was dealing with symptoms. Um, and it's one of those things where, so, you're walking upstairs. The high school I went to and the middle school had like three different stories. So like you had to walk upstairs to be able to get to your locker, and then it's different classes. And like during those 10 minutes in between classes where people are shoving and like pushing up the stairs and down the stairs and stuff, like it was really hard. And you end up getting pushed and shoved and being like, move and things like that, and it's like, thanks guys, you're really helping. And then there was other times where it was like I would be bloated, and that honestly was one of the hardest symptoms to deal with going through my chronic illness journey. And like bloating and distension is a very visible symptom. Like you can't, really hide it unless you're wearing like super baggy clothes. And I was bloating and distending after anything I ate, even after drinking water. And people would point it out. And that's really hard, especially as a teenage girl. Like those are our most like influential years. Everyone's so obsessed with what they look like, and then to have someone point it out, it's like, oh God. No.
That's
Yeah.
just wrong. That would
Yeah.
happen. How I guess did it just happen like very commonly? Like how often did this kind of happen to you? Like every day, once a week?
Yeah, it was definitely a weekly thing.
Yeah.
Again, girls are very at that age, like very aware of what they look like, what other people look like, and I think even more nowadays with social media. And so it was a hard time. And it got to the point where like I would no longer wear like form fitting clothes. Like even if it was really hot out, I would wear hoodies and to try and like cover up any symptoms
Mhm.
that I would have throughout the day.
Yeah. And then that also probably drew even more attention, or maybe less, or at least a different type of attention. Like people still
Yeah.
kind of look at you and have things to say.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So it was definitely hard. But I think I am proud of the fact that chronic illnesses were given to me. I think that mentally I am very tough. And so like yes, this was not easy to go through, but I also learned a lot, and I am the person I am today because of my chronic illnesses and because I was able to mentally get myself through it. Because yes, like chronic illnesses are very difficult physically, but I truly believe that they are more difficult mentally.
Mm. Oh yeah, 'cause that's the hardest part. I mean, just so many people I've talked to, like, and this is the most disgusting thing. I don't know if you also went through this, but a lot of people, their own loved ones, their boyfriend or their husband, will abandon them. I think the statistics was something like a woman who, has a chronic illness is 600% more likely to have a divorce or a breakup than if she doesn't. And so this is something that's kind of massive. Is that an issue you kind of had in your life, or is that something that you've been able to avoid?
No, that is definitely something that I have experienced. I have been told that, and I'm no longer with this person,
Yeah, I
but I
imagine.
I was previously in a relationship where I was told life would be easier if like someone didn't have, or if I was with someone that didn't have your symptoms or your struggles. And that hurts to hear, because it's like, listen, like this is hard for me to have to go through this every single day. Like for you to say that, and I like really trust you, and I really loved this person, to then hear them say that, it's like I guess I'm in this alone. Like I guess you're not that person that I thought was supporting me, right? So
What was even the context? Like, why would you
Um,
even say something like that? That's insane.
yeah, so food is a little difficult at times because I get flare-ups very easily, in terms of like bloating and distension and other GI symptoms. And that has been the symptom that has, or the symptoms that have stayed with me the longest throughout my entire journey. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, oh, let's go out to eat. And it's like, okay, yeah, sure. What do you want to get? And then there's like some cuisine that I'm like, that's not going to sit well. And it's like, or like sometimes you'll give in and you're like, okay, like, sure, let's do it anyway, even though I know I'm going to have all these symptoms after. And then after it's like, yeah, you just had a great like memory with that person, but then you're dealing with all these symptoms. So then
Mm.
you're not in the happiest mood. And then it's like not the best scenario, but it's you know, the right person will love
Oh
you
yeah.
regardless of your symptoms, etc. And I think it's definitely not easy being with someone who has chronic illnesses, right? Like there's going to be some limitations in some
Mm.
way or form. Like I know another limitation for me is I always have to think about, is that safe for me in terms of, will I get injured if I do that? Like ice skating or like going and playing soccer with friends. It's like one of those situations where I have to be like, wait, let me think about that. Um, I'm probably going to get injured. And I just realized I haven't even said what my diagnoses are. I
You
have,
actually did. I actually have. At first, I just want to say it like, no matter what that relationship was going to make it. That's such a
yeah,
minor issue, the food. I mean, normal couples disagree. My girlfriend, she's from India. We
yeah,
disagree on what to eat all the time. I mean, like that's such a minor thing in the
yeah,
first place. But of
yeah.
course, let's go through that because we actually did forget.
Yeah. So my diagnoses are hypermobile ehlers syndrome, and then I have two types of dysautonomia. So I have POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and then also the orthostatic intolerance version of dysautonomia. And so they are constantly, flip-flopping whatever they want to do. Definitely depends on the season too. Like in the summer, my POTS is definitely way worse. Or honestly, both are way worse than in the winter when it's colder out. Um, and then I also have what I mentioned earlier, Bertolotti syndrome, and that is a rare back condition. And essentially, my two vertebra, my L5 and my S1 vertebras, are connected. So I have like two extra bones in my back. So my lower back is like stiffer. But the issue is that when the bones are forming, and they're not fully fused, that can cause a lot of pain. But then once they're fully fused, typically it causes less pain. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
that's
and like once again for our audience, you're hearing a lot of jargon here. She is a biology major, so she's extremely knowledgeable about this. That's why I want to have her on. And I guess I want to kind of focus more on that knowledge as well. Did your illness kind of influence what you ended up studying and how you kind of went about your life?
Oh my God, yes. Oh God, where do I start? Okay, so in eighth grade, when I really went through my medical journey, I do want to talk about my medical journey a little bit more before I get
Okay.
into that, because my medical journey definitely did influence my career path. Um, I was heavily dismissed by an excruciating amount of doctors when I was going through all of my like medical journeys and all my doctor's appointments. I was told that it was in my head. I was told that there was something wrong with me, that it was growing pains, that, just refer you out to someone else. And it was incredibly dismissive. And especially as a young female girl or teenage girl, it was very hard to have to deal with all these symptoms, what felt like alone, because no one in my family had these symptoms. It was just me. Um, and so I vowed to myself that I would become a doctor, um, as an eighth grader. This is me as an eighth grader, I should say. And that I would be the doctor that chronically ill people would come to and would feel heard and would not be dismissed. And I would give them more than 15 minutes in an office, etc. And I went to undergrad. I was a biology major, nutrition minor, and then I was pre med also. But then I graduated and I realized, you know what? Med school is actually not for me because the healthcare system is not set up in a way that I will actually be able to treat patients the way that they deserve to be treated. And
Mhm.
so I decided to still have my overall mission, but to do it in
Okay.
my own way. And so
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you talk a little bit more about that aspect of things? Because that is
yeah,
something that kind of I think is very interesting, at least to me, because I've never really heard that. But I think it might be kind of true.
yeah. So, you know, I think the healthcare system is very much a money pit nowadays, unfortunately, and it has lost the the real reason why the healthcare system exists, which is to help people that are ill, right? And I think you now go to a doctor's office, they see you for like 15 minutes, they give you a prescription or they refer you to someone else, and then they say, I'll see you in 6 months to a year. And that is not how I believe that people should be treated. I wholeheartedly believe that if you have a chronic illness, you should have someone, one, at the very least, give you more than 15 minutes at your first appointment with them. Um, and two, guide their hand through their journey because they have been most likely through a lot of medical trauma. They have been dismissed in the past. Like they probably do not trust you that much and they're still willing to be very vulnerable with you and are giving you a chance. And so to be constantly let down by a system that is, you know, taught to us that it's like the holy grail, right? Like this is they're gonna
Yeah.
save you. It's really disheartening and it's really hard. And I yeah, I don't want to be someone who only sees someone for 15 minutes because I also love making connections with people and I love seeing them through their most difficult times because like that is when someone needs you, right? Like when they're coming to you at their most vulnerable, that is when they deserve to have you hold their hand and guide them and have them trust you, right? Um and so yeah, I guess does that answer your question?
You did perfectly. Yes, yes.
Okay.
I just think it was something that's very, very interesting because it is something that almost seems like the antithesis, really. I mean, you would think that, well, someone's gone through this, they want to be a doctor, but they don't really understand what that truly means, what that kind of comes with a lot of times.
Right, exactly. And especially the kind of doctor that I would want to be, there's a lot of um rules and boards, etc., that would be in the way of me achieving what I want to do. And by board, I don't mean the exam, I mean like the people on the hospital boards, and like insurance, etc., that would get in the way of how I want to practice, right? And so I decided I would find my own way of doing it. I would also do it in a holistic way because that's what I believe in. I went through my whole journey and honestly, I've gotten better not because of medications, but because of the work that I have put into myself mentally and physically and nutritionally. And that is why. So yes, I got my bachelor's of science in biology. I had my minor in nutrition. I am currently getting my master's in nutrition. And then hopefully, government funding allowing, I will go and get my PhD in clinical psychology and then
Okay.
hopefully be able to be a counselor that also incorporates some nutrition. So think of it as like nutrition nutritional psychology is what it's called. And then also incorporate the personal training because I am a certified personal trainer into my whole practice. And to top it all off, I do love research. I started research with a very prestige research group in the Boston area my summer before junior year of high school. And I am still with them. I still do research with them. Stay tuned because my research study that I started 4 years ago now, which is crazy to say, is close to being published.
Okay.
And that's where I will be first author. So it's my research baby, is what I call it. um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, you're probably going to ask me, Izzy, why did you start research and also why so young? And the answer to that is, again, I was so fed up with the medical system. I vowed to be someone who was going to give other people with chronic illnesses answers, and to, be able to give the scientific knowledge to just about anyone, right? As long as you can read scientific literature. Um, and so that's why I got into research, and I absolutely love it. The best research studies I've worked on, I've been able to directly talk with patients, and to hear them be so thankful for like the research that I've been doing, and for them to have a voice has been incredible. And that's why I want to continue giving people with chronic illnesses a voice.
Oh yeah. So I think that is uh, the most important thing is giving people that voice because at least on my political side of things, I'll go to Maryland legislatures where I do most of my work. I
Yeah,
go there, go on down to Annapolis, present about the bill.
yeah,
And like 9 times out of 10, the person I'm talking to is like, what's an autoimmune disease? I have to literally spend like 10 minutes just explaining what an autoimmune disease is. And these are people in the actual health committee. These people are making decisions on how people are treated based on the illnesses. They don't even know an illness
yeah,
that impacts, they say around 7 to 10% of Americans have some form of autoimmune disease. People don't even know that type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. I mean, it's just
yeah,
a massive lack of knowledge. I think you're doing great work just making sure people know that, especially doing work with people who have them, who a lot of times even they don't know what's going on when they first get diagnosed, like at all. And they almost have to like teach themselves about their own illness while
yeah,
they're sick, while they're like half dead. I mean, like it's ridiculous. And so having people
yeah.
like you out there is like extremely important.
Thank you.
So now we're going to talk about the most impressive thing. No, not the most impressive. Most of what you told me is also very impressive, but at least most people will not expect it, I guess I should say. And that's the fact that you're actually able to run a marathon. Was how did you kind of come up with this idea? Did someone talk you into this? And then how did you pull this off?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. I honestly, looking back to like where I am now, I don't know how I do know how I got to where I am, but it's almost like I'm almost in like disbelief. I'm like, I did this. Like I put in the work to get where I am today, and I am achieving my lifetime goals, right? Like that's crazy to me because statistically I'm not supposed to be able to run marathons.
Oh yeah, not at all.
Yeah.
But most
Um,
people can't do it either way.
yeah.
Like people are perfectly healthy.
Yeah. And honestly, I was a competitive athlete. I was a competitive horseback rider for years, and that was taken away from me. Um, and there was some literature at the time suggesting that people with a hypermobile condition, and I should say it took me 2 years to get diagnosed. So I started with symptoms at the end of seventh grade, beginning of eighth grade, and then I wasn't diagnosed until the beginning of 10th grade of high school. And it's sad to say, but that's actually a pretty quick journey of being diagnosed. Some people it takes way longer. And so I
Mhm.
am grateful that it only took me 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And just so our audience knows, for
yeah,
a lot of autoimmune diseases, it can take genuinely, on average, 8 to 10 years between
right.
the symptoms popping up, or at least you noticing your symptoms, then actually figuring out what specifically is wrong.
Yeah,
So people can go like a decade. One person I talked to took them 15 years before they even knew it was happening. They were in the
right.
hospital in and out. And just the stress of being so overwhelmingly sick and not knowing what's going on. I mean, it's terrifying.
Right. Exactly. It's extremely terrifying. And then you also watch your life, fly by because you're so scared of, anything triggering a symptom or other people seeing your symptoms, right? That you start to hide. Um, and that is really, it's really scary, right? And it feels so isolating. And then, relationships, you start to lose relationships, etc. And it's because people don't understand or they don't want to know, right? And it can be really hard. So for those of you who are struggling right now, like I see you, I hear you, and I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through, but I promise you will get to the other end. You will get to the other side and you will get through this. But yeah, my journey, I like okay, going back. I had read some literature saying that strength training was really good for people with hypermobile ehlers-Danlos syndrome. or and other forms of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or connective tissue disorders. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Why not? I mean, at this point, I already feel horrible. I got really depressed and anxious because of my medical journey. And it got to the point where my mom, I told her she would pick me up from school and I'd be like, you have to drive me to the gym. Even if I don't want to, even if I'm really depressed that day, like you have to drive me to the gym because that was like the only place that made me smile and made me really happy and made me feel like I wasn't chronically ill. And I felt super powerful and I felt like I could absolutely tackle anything. And also like seeing myself like go from the really light, like 5 pound weights and then slowly progress up, you know, to the weights I'm doing now, it's super empowering, especially when like you couldn't even walk upstairs. Or I couldn't even walk upstairs. And so, I took that and I kind of ran with it, if that makes sense. I was like, okay, like strength training is
I
the
see what you did
thing.
there. Okay.
um, Strength training is what I say literally saved my life. And it will always be a part of my life because it's the thing that helped support my joints, right? My hypermobile joints that were giving me all this pain, etc. It's the thing that has led to not having that many like subluxations anymore. It's the thing that's led to not having joint pain really. Like I have it sometimes, especially if it's rainy out or something like that. But like compared to what I used to have, it's like barely anything. And so yeah, that alongside a ton of work on nutrition, I definitely like my mom definitely tried her best when it came to nutrition growing up, but I still was eating a lot of like processed foods, chips, etc. So for those that don't know, like really processed foods like chips or you know white refined bread, things like that can actually be very inflammatory. And for someone who's dealing with chronic pain all the time, like there's enough inflammation going on in your body, like you don't need to add more. And so it was about finding a balance between incorporating more vegetables, more fruit, more whole grains, like limiting the sodas or not drinking soda anymore, eliminating like the candies, things like that. And I'm not saying get rid of it altogether because I don't believe in that either, but it was more about finding a balance and understanding like, hey, I need to be able to support my body because right now my body is yelling for help, right? Like it is yelling like, girl, something's wrong. I need you to help me. And so I was like, okay. And so I started to teach myself and I fell in love with nutrition. Hence why I'm getting my master's in it now. And I wholeheartedly believe in it. And the brain and the gut are connected through the central nervous system, specifically in the autonomic nervous system. And a lot of like how you're feeling in your gut also influences how you're feeling psychologically. And so that was another thing I really wanted to focus on because I knew that my symptoms weren't going to go away overnight, right? But I did know that I was really depressed and really anxious. And so that was another thing that I wanted to work on to really help me with those symptoms too that I was having. And at the end of the day, it really helped. And also mindset wise, oh my God, I've come so far. I used to see myself as a victim, like why me, right? Like I used to like when I was going through the worst parts, I was crying on the floor with my mom, being like, I can't do this anymore. And slowly, especially through strength training and being able to lift heavier, I was like, you know what, there are things that I can do, and I'm going to continue to focus on the things that I can do because I know that over time they're going to add up. And so now that's one of my mottos, which is that baby steps add up to massive leaps. Um, and I wholeheartedly believe that because I say that our chronic illnesses are like really stubborn friends that you have to trick into doing things that they don't want to do. And so you like slowly have to push them instead of like really pushing them.
Oh yeah. 'Cause, I
Yeah.
mean, really, that's going to be the most important thing. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, and especially if you're starting from a place of like severe chronic illness, especially like an autoimmune disease like POTS, you have to just keep moving. You have to do everything you can. And so I think what I want to kind of talk about now is a little bit more about your work and kind of what you've been doing recently and like kind of how you help people. Because of course, one of the reasons we brought you here is to really kind of add value to the lives of the people who listen to this show and really so they can know like exactly. All right. Sorry for that, everyone. We had some technical difficulties, but we are back. And so, in summary, I want to hear more from Izzy, and hopefully you guys will learn more from Izzy about, how people can actually take care of their physical health and also their mental health when they have these illnesses, especially when you have multiple.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I did actually just start my business. It's called Steps to Perseverance. Find me on Instagram. And it's all about this, right? It's about combining exercise, nutrition, and mindset for people who have chronic illnesses. And the number one thing that I hear doctors tell people who are chronically ill when they're having symptoms is do less, you know, rest more. And then people take that advice because doctors are doctors, right? They have the highest degree in society. Like we should believe everything they say. But I would actually disagree with that advice. And, obviously, every medical diagnosis and every stage of a chronic illness is different for everyone. But what I am constantly seeing is that people who are chronically ill then sit at home and they don't go out and they don't use their muscles, and then that leads to muscle atrophy,
Mm.
which means that like the muscle goes away essentially, right? Like if you're not working a muscle, it's not going to stay as strong. And then symptoms get worse, and it's this never-ending cycle. And if you think about it, if we're talking about POTS and dysautonomia, right? Like your heart is jumping massive increases, right? Like for beats per minute. Your heart's a muscle. You need to be able to train it to withstand that massive leap in its heart rate, right? So the way that and this is going to also go into how I'm running marathons now, is the way that I was able to train my heart, my cardiovascular system, was that I started with like 10-20 minute easy steady state, which is like easy pace on the bike because the bike is low impact and you're seated. So there's not as much risk of falling or anything. Um, and I would have my heart rate at a conversational pace. And that for me, as someone who was chronically ill, was like super easy for someone who, was not chronically ill. um, but that's where I had to start. And then eventually, through strength training and continuing my cardiovascular training over years, because I want people to understand it's taken me years. I am 22 now, and I started my journey when I was 14, 13. So it's been years. It's like 9-10 years of doing this work. And now I'm finally seeing the hard work pay off. And that's how I'm able to do my lifetime goal of running marathons. And so my goal is to run all the world majors. So that is Boston Marathon, New York City Marathon, Chicago Marathon, London, Berlin, and Tokyo marathons. And then Australia was just added. And so far I've run Boston in 2023. I ran Chicago in 2024. I will be running London Marathon in April and then Berlin Marathon in September. So this is my first time
Okay.
ever doing 2 marathons in 1 year. So I'm really pushing my body, but I'm hoping everything stays okay. um, and so what I want people to realize is that yes, sometimes you have to rest because your body is yelling at you to rest, but sometimes you do have to push a little bit and you do have to tell your body like, hey, I know like right now it kind of sucks, but I need to do 10 minutes. All I'm asking you to do if you're just starting on this journey is 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes every other day of like picking up some weight or, going on a walk or maybe sitting on a bike. And slowly over time, you're going to realize that you're going to start feeling better because you're using what your body, like our body was not meant to sit around all day. Society has turned into a very sedentary world. And that, if you think about how humans started, like we were walking miles every day, right? Like our body is made to be used and worked. And of course, the degree to that is different, especially for people with chronic illnesses. But I want people to realize that even with chronic illness, you are capable of so, so much. And I don't want you to think that just because you have this diagnosis that you're not able to do things, right? That's not true.
Oh, yeah. And of course, these illnesses, they give you limitations, but they don't end your life. It's not the end. It's not
Right.
over yet. You can still learn, you can still grow, and you can still work hard, especially when it comes to growing your body. Because especially if you have a chronic illness, like you said, you have to. Kind of like the way you said it, like your heart is a muscle, right? Like your heart is a muscle, literally. And so if
Yeah.
you don't work that out, that's gonna make a very big difference for
Yeah.
you and could cause some very severe problems, especially if you're already sick.
Right. Um, yeah, so that's what I do. I am that person that I was talking about before that literally holds the chronically ill person's hand and I guide them through this journey. And my clients have been killing it. And, it's been incredible to see their progress because, they came to me feeling so stuck and so done with their chronic illnesses, dictating every single move in their lives, right?
Yeah.
Every single decision. And now they're like, actually, like, I am starting to be able to make decisions. I, like, not chronically ill me, is able to start saying, I want to do this, this, or this, right? And so that's an incredibly powerful thing to be able to realize and to be able to execute on, right? And I want other people to be able to realize that too, that they have the power, not that their chronic illness always gets to make the decisions, but that you get to make decisions too. And I think something that you brought up before, which is a really great point, is one of my favorite mindset shifts is I get to, not I have to, right? Like if you have the ability to move your body, and I don't care what capacity it is, like you get to move your body. There are so many people on this planet who are not able to move their bodies, right? And as someone who's chronically ill, like my journey of how I was able to move my body started very, not great. But now look at where I am because I slowly put in the work. And so I want you to realize that, like, you have a gift. You have the gift of being able to move your body. You are able to express how you feel through moving your body, whatever way that is, right? And so use it, use that ability.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing. Like we said, we don't want to be telling people that, oh, if you're not doing these things or if you're not running a marathon, that like, you are doing something wrong. But like, whatever you can do, you should be doing that, and you have to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like I I'm not telling everyone that they should be running marathons. I'm not saying that at all.
I can't do that. Yeah, no. I hope, because yeah, I'm gonna let you down there. Yeah, I'm not running a marathon. Nope.
Um, but I am asking people to go on some walks and to pick up some weight because there's a lot of literature out there that says that lifting for people who even aren't chronically ill is actually really helping them for their longevity. So, um, and their biomarkers and their blood sugar, et cetera. So like I want you to realize the power of being able to pick up some weight. And also it's just really empowering to be able to see like, hey, I started with 5 pound weights and now I'm like, I am kicking butt at the gym. And people look at me and are like, oh, how? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm doing it. And it just feels really good.
Yeah. And so I know that, have a tight schedule. You kind of have to go soon, but I guess the last kind of question I want to ask for you is, for someone who, especially a young person who like just got diagnosed, what really would you say to them? What's the most important piece of advice?
That's such a great question. Okay. I would say one, I see you, I hear you. You are not alone. And I know, especially if you are young and you were just diagnosed with something or with some chronic illness, like it's scary because, you have a whole future ahead of you and you're like, what does this mean now? But like I had a whole vision plan for myself and now there's like a little like dent in the road and I don't know what this means now for my future. And so I want you to realize that there's still so much ahead of you and there is so much that you should be excited for in life, so many experiences, and like this is not the end at all, right? Like I want you to go chase every single opportunity you want in life because like there's endless amount of possibilities out there, and like yeah, you might have a diagnosis, right? But honestly, that is such a minute thing about you. Like you are so much more than that. You have so many traits, so much love to give to people in this world. And so do not let your chronic illness dim your fire or dim your light, right? Like I still want you to shine brightly and to like even if you can't actually run, I want you to run through this world being like, hell yeah, I deserve to be here and I'm going to show people who I am. And I do not want you to hide. I think that it is so common for people with chronic illnesses to start to hide and to isolate themselves because they're dealing with so many symptoms. The world around them doesn't understand. Like, it's really difficult, but I want you to advocate for yourself, even when it's really difficult. I want you to use the let them theory. If you haven't read it, it's by Mel Robbins. I highly recommend it. I want you to use the let them theory, meaning that I want you to realize that people will be people. They're going to be mean. They're not going to understand. And you're going to just say, let them be them. And I'm going to protect me and my energy.
Hmm.
And then I want you to keep doing you. And I want you to be proud of who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, that's the end of our episode here. Thank you very much, Izzy,
Of
for kind of
course.
coming here, telling us your whole story and making like 10 different puns about running as we kind of went through things. Kind of a good build up there. And so, yeah, to our audience, Ashley will be back for our next episode. That episode is going to be about politics and how all these very strange things happening with Doge and in the news is going to impact people with chronic illnesses. But once again, I want to thank you, Izzy, for being here. And hopefully, like I said, you can also tell this story at schools because, like you
Yes,
said,
I
a
would
lot of
love
young
to.
people need to hear that last thing you just said. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.